Welcome to Cheapskate Garage.
So the purple spring, that's a 70 psi spring. The yellow spring is, I believe, a 58 psi spring. Here's the purpose of this. Hold on, let me turn down the sounds here. Let me show you something real quick. So this is the bottom of a melting oil pump. There's my pickup. And down in that hole sets a little piston or a cylinder that is then held in place by these two springs, and that's what controls your pressure relief. You remove this pin out the top there and then the spring. I had the purple one in there, which is a 70 psi spring, and I'm going down to a yellow one, which is a 58 psi spring, and I'll explain why. So basically, after long discussions with guys that I know that have built engines, the 70 psi spring in there isn't enough, or the engine doesn't build enough oil pressure for it to activate and bleed by. So no matter when the engine's running, it's always gonna, it's never gonna activate, never gonna bleed oil or recirculate it back into the pan. Or exactly how it does that, I'm not sure. So the idea is running a 58 psi spring. Now remember, when I was doing engine braking, I was running 62 psi at 2100 RPM. And the idea is that if I go to a 58 psi spring, that once I hit over 58 psi, it'll start recirculating it back to the pan rather than shove it through the engine. Am I going to fall off on oil pressure? I don't know. It shouldn't be. I shouldn't be seeing that. It should stay at a constant 58 psi no matter what range of RPM I am in. Because rather than right now, it being at 65 psi at 5,000 RPM and dropping down to 55 psi or whatever it was. I don't even think it was getting that low. It shouldn't be an issue. So the 58 psi spring in there, as long as the engine's still got oil flow in it, it's not like the engine's going to live at 5,000 RPM. It's going to seat 5,000 RPM for 10 to 15 seconds at a time. So the idea, the thought is putting in a 58 psi spring, it'll hit the pressure relief valve sooner, and then it'll circulate oil back into the pan to keep me from running out of oil. But let me show you, got the engine flipped over right now. So right up in here is where the oil pickup tube comes in. It comes around like that. And everything else inside the engine looks pretty good. Can't complain. I had to mount my starter like this, with a solenoid being down. Typically, they sit right up in here. But for some reason, when I was underneath the truck trying to put this new starter in, it kept on hitting things and would not line up. I also got a new flex plate. Man. You can see that one lines up really pretty goddamn good. Can I hold the camera still? Probably not. So I got this old pump and pickup right here. It is kind of pretty nasty. But you can see how from this flat it angles down. I have since modified my pickup tube angle, and you can see how now it bends down a little bit more. I took the MAP gas torch and put some bends on it. So I'm curious to see how deep I can get this one. So I'm having a hard time holding the phone, or the camera, and the tape measure at the same time, but you can see now my top side, or the back side, this area right here, is now at 7.5 inches. So if I use my original pan, it wouldn't fit very well. That wouldn't fit right now. I'll show you. So you can see the top part up here is hitting the bottom of my pan. This is already here. I'm going to have to push it this way closer to the crank to get this to be a 1/2 inch or 3/8 to a 1/2 inch from the bottom of the pan, and that actually puts my intake for it up even higher. So what do we learn? We learned that bending the oil pump pickup tube wasn't a good idea. I guess we're gonna have to buy a new one. Oh well, you never know. Actually, I got the old one there. I could probably clean up, put it on there, and tack it in place where it needs to be. Just a thought going on here. Right here, I got my 7.5 inch deep pan. Okay, we're gonna add that 7.5 inches. We're gonna add that onto it, and now it's gonna make it what? About a 9-inch deep pan. So we're gonna add 1.5 inches to this oil pan right now. We're gonna end up, to make it easy, we're gonna take the center in here. We're gonna just cut right along here, like that. We're gonna try to work around this oil drain plug on this other side. We're definitely gonna be removing it or plugging it with weld, and then we'll be using the original drain plug in this pan. Yeah, this was the original pan that came on the other block. It was pretty dented, trashed, and tore up. It was nasty on the inside. I gotta clean all that out. I gotta clean all the oil off of it. I gotta clean all the chrome off of this, so that way when I go to weld it, I got good welds and it's gonna hold for a long time. And I might MIG it, but I was thinking, why not get out the TIG torch and see if I can still TIG. It's been 7, 9, 10, 11 years, so let's just see what happens. But it's going to give us 1.5 inches, roughly, more oil capacity. So this being a regular factory 5-quart pan, it's probably going to go up to maybe 6.5 quarts, maybe even 7. I don't know. We'll find out when it's all built. Who cares at the moment? All I know is that I'm achieving the goal of getting more volume in my oil pan. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Ferguson, because he gave me a couple really cool pans that would fit just awesomely in there if there was more room. They just don't quite fit in there because of the way the cross member goes. I'd have to severely modify those, and I don't feel like I should be modifying those. I think I should just leave those alone. He also gave me a windage tray for those with some nice ARP hardware, but we're going to go ahead and just stick to this way and see what happens. I might end up throwing or modifying one of those other pans, either give them back or modify one of those other pans for when I build the other motor. Who knows? But yeah, let's see what we got. Or let's not see what we got, let's just do it. So after many long hours and debating on what I should do with this, here's what I've done. I kept the high volume pump. I put in a 58 PSI spring. I got a new pickup tube. It's the Melling 55-S2, which drops the pickup tube down 2 inches, or an inch further than this factory-ish one. It's still the same diameter, because I've had questions about, well, if I'm at 5,000 RPM, could that be the choke point of it? It's just not able to, being a high volume pump, it's pulling the volume from the pan, but it can't pull any more volume because that's choking it. Just a question that I had. But research and stuff, it's kind of everybody's pointing to no it won't, no it won't, no it won't. I hope it doesn't, because you think about it, 5,000 RPMs, the engine's spinning faster. It's moving more oil than it does at 2,000 RPMs and whatnot. The other thing I did was I made my oil pan a little bit deeper. I took the old factory one that I had for this block, or no, for the other block, that was kind of like trashed up. I beat it back into submission, welded it up, and now it's, instead of it being a 7.5-inch pan, it's a 9-inch deep pan. And so that's where that 2-inch deep pickup comes in too. And now I have set my oil pickup tube depth to 8.5 inches. With the pan the way it is, it sits right at about 8 and 15 sixteenths. Then you got to figure an 1/8 inch for the gasket. So that's another 1/8 inch. So that's 9 and a 16th. So right now it sits at 8.5. The oil pickup does. So that means it's going to be a 1/2 inch off the bottom, which is going to be plenty because that's already going to be way more oil than what a 7.5 quart pan could hold. And when I fill this thing up, I plan to first fill it up till it's full on the dipstick, run it, let the oil filter fill up, the whole engine fill up with oil, check the oil again, add a little bit more oil to it to bring it up to where the dipstick is. That's where the oil would be on a stock 350. That's where it should be at least, and whatnot. So I don't know. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm pulling this thing back apart again. No big deal. It's not the end of the world. But I think it'll work. I think it'll give me a good chance. If anything, I think what the original problem was is, and I don't know if I filmed this or not, but I was really afraid to warp the bottom side of my oil pump housing. And so I just did a couple little tacks on it, 3 of them. And I think is what happened was those tacks were, they didn't penetrate good enough into the base metal. They penetrated into the tube fine because that's thin metal, but the base of the steel there, they didn't get enough penetration in. And I think somehow, some way, shape, or form, they got bumped because when I pulled the engine apart, pulled the oil pan off of it, the pickup tube looked like it was sitting high. And then when I measured it, it measured at like 6 and 7/8 or something like that, and it just didn't look right, and everything was messed up. So I've redone that whole system, and it should be fine now. But now we're ready to put the oil pan on it and seal it up, call it a done deal. We got to do new transmission lines. I also got, you see it back there, brand new 3-row aluminum radiator for this thing, and now this time it's actually pressed right up against the fans, so whatever the fans move for air, it's going directly into the radiator. There's no 3-inch gap there for the air to just kind of push against it. It's going to be shoving it through. So I think we're going to be set up now. I think there's not going to be any issues or any reasons why I can't take this thing drag racing this spring when the track opens up. So let me show you kind of what I got going on right now. We got the motor flipped upside down. And there she is. And you can see I welded the hell out of it this time so it doesn't move. But let me put my square up here. Where the hell did it go? So if you really want to confuse yourself, look at the numbers on the right side. Well, let's get down here with this thing level. That is 9 and the upper number is 10, so 1/2 inch less than 9 is 8.5. You can see that. So at least I know that's not going to be my issue, and I did the 58 PSI spring again, so that way the motor never made 70 PSI, ever, when it was running. So by dropping it down to the 58 PSI, the train of thought is to a 58 PSI relief spring in the pump. The train of thought is that, at 58, when it builds 58 PSI, it's going to start relieving the pressure, sending it back into the pan or into the pump. I don't know how it does it exactly, but it's going to relieve it. It's going to keep it in the bottom side of the engine, which is the important thing. So that way there's that much more oil for it to pick up and send through the block. I mean, I ran this thing for long periods of time, around 3,000 RPM, never had any major oil pressure fluctuation until I hit it, and I'm up when that tack passes 5,000, right at 5,000, it just the oil pressure just goes the other way and starts falling. I'm like, and then I get out of it. So the motor's not damaged. Everything looks great inside of it. So we're going to just put it back together and get it done. Hopefully we can fire this thing up for New Year's. I don't know.